Hey everyone, Ethos here from MMOBomb.com. Today I have a first look for you guys for Dragon Ball The Breakers. This is a budget title developed by Dimps Corporation. This is a developer that helped work on the most recent Soul Calibur game, and it's published by Bandai Namco. Dragon Ball The Breakers is a online asymmetrical action game in a similar vein as Dead by Daylight, as I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have noticed. Actually, I think making that comparison is perfectly fine, as I would say this is almost a close to copy of that game from a design standpoint, with of course a little bit of a Dragon Ball skin and flair to it. It is a game where essentially it is a online multiplayer game where there's two teams. There's a team of 7 of civilians, and that's players, everyone's a player, and their job is to cooperate and work together to collect these keys to build up this time machine so that they can escape the area. And they can also collect the Dragon Balls before the villain does, and then they can use that to give their team or themselves like a superpowered buff that can help them close out the game and win as well. The other team consists of only one person, hence why it's called asymmetrical, and this is what's called the Raider, or what you might know as like a killer in like Dead by Daylight. This is essentially someone who his job is to basically wipe out the other team completely. They will try to stop them from progressing and completing their objectives. They'll eliminate any of the civilians that they can on the map, NPC-wise and real player-wise, and just make it where their lives just a living hell the whole time. So it's pretty much a little bit of like a cat and mouse type of game where the cat's chasing the mice around, and eventually then the mice become these like mutated monsters at the end, and then they start beating up on the cat. But yeah, so like I said, Dragon Ball The Breakers it's kind of interesting because it's a budget title. So you're really only going into this game for only $20. So you're not paying $30, you're not paying $60. So keep that in mind when we talk about this game and if it might be something that you might be interested in. The best way I could describe my entire experience playing this game is the game is functional. That's the best way I can say it. There are definitely flashes of some good ideas here, and I think overall, like from a design standpoint, there's definitely some interesting ideas that they did. And I think on top of that, I don't feel like they were very limited by the use of the Dragon Ball IP. I feel like they kind of pushed the limits. Like obviously Dragon Ball is an anime, so it can get pretty far out there. But everything from a fanfare standpoint is like perfect. Like if you're a Dragon Ball fan, you'll really enjoy this game simply because they have a bunch of the most iconic villains that you can play as. So if you are the Raider, you could play as Cell, Frieza, and Boo. And I think there's a fourth one that no, I think it's those 3 actually. So yeah, those are the 3 that you can play as right now. Unfortunately, no androids yet for the Raider side. And on top of that, no Brawly, which seems like a missed opportunity. And then for the allies, the interesting part about being a survivor in this game is that there is a spirit mechanic. So you can load into the game with your own loadout. So this comes with your own equipment and kind of like perks. So each character can kind of like create their own type of playstyle for their own character. And then on top of that, you can take these spirits. So basically around the map, there's these charges that you can use to like kind of like charge up your key. And once you reach certain levels, you can transform into the spirit of one of the heroes from the Dragon Ball universe. So you could be like Goku, Krillin, Piccolo, Vegeta. So it's like really cool when you think about it. You can kind of like transform into them and kind of turn the tables on the Raider. If you work all together, you get powerful enough, and then you jump the Raider all together, or you do it at different intervals, and you kind of like hit and run tactics, you can essentially like hurt them enough that you could actually beat them before even reaching the end stage of getting the time machine and jetting out of the timeline. So it's kind of interesting in that respect. There's also like pieces of equipment that you can get within the game, like rockets and stuff like that. And these items help you either like from things like a dragon radar or a scanner. So this helps you like scan like where the enemy's at and where they're located, to even the dragon radar helping you find certain items, whether it's civilians and stuff like that. The main thing that you're going to be doing is 2 things. You're going to be finding civilians and rescuing them, and the main reason you want to do that is because you don't want the Raider to kill them, because if the Raider kills them, it gives them a power buff, which allows them to level up. So each Raider has a couple of levels that they go through, 1, 2, and 3, and as they get more powerful, they can essentially blow up a part of the map. And when they blow up part of the map, you lose access to that part and all the resources that were there. So it's a very powerful way that it causes the entire playstyle to shift, because then you only have a certain amount of playable space left, which means that you have less places to hide. So there's kind of a cool little tactic to that. And there's a lot of really cool like cinematic shots and stuff like that, especially when you're the raider and you're blowing stuff up, and when you're like killing people. It's very one-to-one to exactly like the lines and the animations that they would do in the anime, which I think is really cool. When I think about this game, really, I have to say is that the game really feels functional, and the reason I say that is like there's some good ideas here. Don't get me wrong. There's some pretty cool ideas here, and I think they do a couple of things to make it stand out a little bit from Dead by Daylight, but it is essentially Dead by Daylight. But I think when it comes to the mechanical, the game feel of the game isn't perfect. From the movement to even the combat system, the movement's solid. Like there's some cool stuff here. Like you can do grappling hooks, you can jump in the air, very like Fortnite type movement system. But a lot of the combat is lacking. Especially when you start to fight the raider, or you are the raider, and you're engaging in like what should be arguably the strongest system of your entire game, the actual like fighting game system of fighting as like Goku versus Frieza. It really just boils down to a very generic, very basic like lock-on system that you lock onto someone, you click a button, and then your character just like dashes them and tries to punch them. And sometimes because it's like a soft lock-on, it's like hard, you can miss randomly, and your character gets locked into a lot of like stun locking animations or locked animations where they can't break out of them. So if you miss somebody by like an inch or something like that, it creates this awkward moment where your character's just like in midair, just swinging at the air. And overall, especially when you're a civilian, you're not even powered up, if you get jumped by the raider, there's some items you can use to try to get away, but like the timing of it can kind of get a little bit wonky, and like sometimes the hit detection can kind of also get a little bit weird. And that kind of goes into another big con of this game. The game doesn't really teach you a lot. There's a tutorial that just gives you basically just a story idea of like why you're doing what you're doing, which is basically, oh, you're stuck in a different timeline, and Trunks is trying to get you out of that timeline, but there's these the villains are breaking into these different timelines, and they're causing havoc, so you have to like save people and get out of it. It's very low-hanging fruit. There's really nothing really really deep about it. It's just trying to give you an excuse to, like, all right, blah 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 blah, time travel something. Okay, now go play the game. You're here for the gameplay. You want to play this type of multiplayer game. He doesn't really teach you anything about the Dragon Ball mechanic. He doesn't teach you anything about like the different types of items, the charging up, the like when you specifically like transform, like what are the abilities, how does that work, like the different tiers. Like none of that is taught to you. It's kind of like you get thrown into the deep end. And so I felt like my first hour playing this game was very overwhelming. Like there was just so much stuff, like ability wise and stuff in the main hub, that I was kind of like, what am I supposed to do here? There were certain things I saw other players doing. I was like, how are they doing that? And I realized I had to go to a store and buy this said like a piece of equipment, like stuff like that, where like it would have been nice if this stuff was kind of explained. There is like a little tutorial guide, but this guide that gives you more information about everything is like literally text. And let's be honest, nobody has time for that. Nobody has time to go through a big like categorized sort of like text box paragraphs of explaining mechanics. Like you should show, not just like make them read paragraphs. That's like very lazy way of like trying to do like new player onboarding. But I think the other thing you might notice is once you're done with that, that's it. There's really nothing else. There's no like story campaign. There's no sort of like progression in the story narrative so far, with even in a multiplayer sense. There seems to be like seasons, but after that they kind of just throw you and say, okay, just start matchmaking. And really, when you think about it, you're playing essentially one type of game mode experience, which is just this main raider versus survivors, and you're playing it on maybe about like 3 to 4 maps. And of course, like the locations of stuff can get swapped around, but that's essentially all you're doing. The mix-ups and the way the depth, or I guess the progression of the game, comes from its abilities. So you can unlock different abilities for the spirit. So Goku could have some different abilities, Vegeta, that you take the form of, and also like the equipment, you can get different pieces of equipment, makes different types of builds for your survivor. The raiders also have a couple different pieces of equipment. But another con of this is that when it comes to the idea of this monetization of not only you're just paying $20 for a multiplayer only game, which isn't terrible, I think that's a fair ask, but you're also including microtransactions. So there is like shops in this game where you can get new drip for your character, and there is a lot of stuff in the shop that you can unlock with just in-game currency, which is good. There's a couple things that are unlocked with real life money that you have to pay money for. Not like the whole store is full of it, but there's a couple of little things, little bundles here and there. Your Fortnite stuff, type of like monetization. You have your battle pass, which everything you expect. But the thing that threw me off was that there's a gacha system on top of this. I was like, why is there a gacha system in this? Like, You have already the monetization of your cosmetics. What is the gacha? And the gacha is for the spirits. So the people that you can transform into to try to like beat off the raider, you have to do through a gacha system to unlock them. And when I did this, I got Vegeta the first time, so I was like, oh, cool. But when I started to realize then on top of that, and when I was checking with some other players, is that when you want to make the best build possible for your character, you're going to need to have to use this gacha system to hope that you get the ability that you need for the said character so that you can build the best character you can do. And this causes a lot of problems, I think, down the road when it comes to balance, because then not only did I feel there's already like a little bit of an imbalance between the survivors and the raider, as in the survivors seem to level up a lot faster than the raider does, and the raider seems a little bit underpowered. I'm playing with people all around. There's a level spectrum of people who are level 20s, and then I played with somebody who was a level 70 in my lobby. So like these people have had more time on the game, they've gone through more RNG, so they probably unlocked more skills than me. And then it's like how much of a power difference are these skills? How much is that affecting the actual like balance of the game and giving them an advantage that I don't have, whether it's like items or it's a skill for a character or a special ability. I really felt this when it came to the raider. It took me about 2 hours of gameplay before I got one chance to play as a raider. So it was a couple of games. I played quite a bit of games before I got a chance to playing as a raider, and this was the first time I got a chance to play them. I got to phase 2. I beat up a couple people, but then ultimately like I just lost. They just escaped so fast. The game ended like extremely fast because people were hiding. I didn't really know what to do outside of like killing civilians and trying to find them and eliminate them. But these type of games, it takes some time to really like understand like what's the meta, what you should be really trying to do, or what signs you should be looking for to like take certain actions. And there's just a lot of things that can happen, especially since there's 7 people on the other team. There's just so many things that can happen. You can get jumped even as a raider. Like you could be focused on one person and then somebody else will come out of nowhere and just start like beating you up. And it can get kind of frustrating, I think, for the raider. But overall, I wouldn't say it makes it where the game's unplayable, and I have to stress this enough. I don't think that this game is necessarily bad. It is a budget game. It's $20, and it looks and it feels and it plays like a very budget game. It feels like a game that Bandai was like, look, we need something for our Q4 fiscal year. We just need some game. You got like less than 2 years to make it, go. And they were just like, all right, what's this simplest thing that we can do, we can put together that will work, and it's done to a level where it's functional, and it for the most part it runs fine. Do I feel like this game's gonna be like, oh my god, the new multiplayer Heat? No, probably not. It'll probably just slowly die into the ether, and a year later no one will even remember this game even existed. But I think there'll still be a small hardcore community that will still stick by it and still play it. So my recommendation is, if you are a Dragon Ball fan and you have nothing else to play, I think this game might interest you, especially like if you get a group of friends together, like an Among Us group or something like that, and you play it. I think you guys could have a lot of fun. Depending on how fast they are on the post-launch, and they're able to show, you know, new characters added to the game, they're able to do this at consistent point. I think that people will be satisfied. But if they take too long, then you know, people will get bored and just stop. Like in 2 months, people won't be playing this anymore. So yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on Dragon Ball The Breakers. Let me know in the comment section below if you've picked this game up, or if you're interested after watching this first look, or if you're probably going to pass. I hope that this was helpful, and yeah, my name is Ethos, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, everybody.